Unlock the hidden world of the Redstone family secrets in this eye-opening video. From humble beginnings as a drive-in theater chain founded by Michael Mickey Rothstein, in 1936, the Redstone dynasty exploded into a $40 billion media powerhouse under Sumner Redstone, 1923-2020. Controlling giants like Viacom, CBS, Paramount Pictures, MTV, and Nickelodeon, Sumner amassed a personal fortune of $2.6 billion, reshaping global entertainment and pop culture forever. But behind the glitz lies a web of dark secrets. Family feuds, allegations of elder abuse, and corporate scandals have plagued this empire, drawing eerie parallels to infamous dynasties like the Borgias with their poison plots, or the Grimaldis' paternity dramas. Enter Sherry Redstone, Sumner's daughter, who seized the reins after his passing. With a 2025 net worth of $500 million, she orchestrated the 2019 Viacom-CBS merger and the groundbreaking 2024 Paramount Skydance deal, ensuring the family's 80% voting control over Paramount Global endures. What really happened in the boardrooms and family battles? How does their influence rival royal patrons like the Windsors? Dive deep into the Redstone family scandals, untold stories, and lasting legacy. Far from fading like the Goulds, their power thrives. Hit play now to uncover the truth about one of America's most enigmatic media clans. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. From new money to old money. The Redstone story starts with Michael Mickey Redstone, born in 1902 to Jewish immigrants in Boston's rough-and-tumble neighborhoods. Originally called Rothstein, the family switched to Redstone in the 1940s, a smart move for blending in during times of growing anti-Semitism. Mickey's childhood was nothing like the fancy estates of old money clans, like the Astors, whose wealth went back to 1700s fur trades. Nope, Mickey was the classic new money go-getter, starting from scratch and grabbing chances in a hot new field. During the 1930s Great Depression, when times were super tough, Mickey saw gold in cars, exploding in popularity, and movies becoming everyone's escape. He launched Northeast Theater Corporation, which grew into National Amusements, beginning with drive-in theaters. These were game changers back then. Outdoor spots where families parked their cars, hooked up speakers to the windows, and watched films under the stars. The very first one popped up in 1933 in New Jersey, but Mickey went all in, expanding fast across the Northeast and riding the wave of post-war suburbs booming. By the 1950s, National Amusements ran tons of theaters, raking in cash from tickets, snacks, and owning the land. This was pure new money energy, raw, hands-on, and linked to everyday fun instead of snooty high society. Mickey's spots served regular folks, kind of like those early Miami brickle builders, turning wild swamps into buzzing city spots. Unlike old money like the Mellons, who grew inherited steel cash into banks and art collections, Mickey's fortune came from sweating the details, picking locations, handling worker issues, and battling rivals in tough markets. His wealth built up steadily to millions by his 1987 passing, but it was humble next to what came later. Mickey's style set the stage for the family's upgrade. He taught his sons Sumner and Edward to hustle hard and keep the business in family hands. National Amusements stayed a private holding company, hinting at the fancy control tricks that would later copy old money ways. But back then, the Redstones were still outsiders to the posh crowd, with wealth that felt fresh and rough, like those early 1900s oil barons building empires amid wild ups and downs. Sumner Murray Redstone, born in 1923, took his dad's fire and cranked it up with elite education and cutthroat drive. A Harvard Law alum who cracked Japanese codes in World War II, Sumner jumped into the family gig in 1954. He refreshed national amusements, moving from drive-ins to modern multiplexes to match how people watched movies. But Sumner wasn't stopping there. He dreamed of a media powerhouse to rival legends like William Randolph Hearst. The Game Changer hit in 1987. Sumner pulled off a fierce takeover of Viacom for $3.4 billion. Viacom was a cable player owning hot networks like MTV and Nickelodeon. MTV, starting in 1981, changed teen culture forever with music vids and wild shows like Beavis and Butthead, while Nickelodeon hooked kids with stuff like Rugrats. This buy let Sumner jump from showing movies to making them, spreading out from just theaters. It was a gutsy, debt-heavy gamble, straight new money risk, not the safe plays old money families prefer. Then in 1999, he went bigger with a $37 billion Viacom-CBS merger. CBS, around since 1927, added class with its TV network, radios, and classics like I Love Lucy and 60 Minutes. This birthed Viacom-CBS, now Paramount Global, a monster with movie studios like Paramount Pictures, books from Simon & Schuster, and streaming services. By 2000, the company's value topped $80 billion, and Sumner's own worth hit over $14 billion per Forbes. This era screamed new money, bold growth, loud confidence. Remember his content is king line, and massive deals. But hints of old money showed up too. Sumner kept National Amusements as the control hub, holding 80% of Viacom and CBS voting power with just a tiny ownership slice. The dual-class shares setup, family Class A shares, with 10 votes each versus 1 for Class B, was like the Rockefellers, with oil or Fords with cars, keeping outsiders from messing with family calls. Sumner started legacy stuff, donating to Harvard and more, though not huge yet. But his life kept that new money sparkle, 2 divorces, open fights, and lawsuit-loving ways. His 1999 split from first wife Phyllis Gloria Raphael after 52 years cost $150 million, showing the family strain. One big key to the Redstones' glow-up was using smart business tools to protect their wealth for kids and grandkids. National Amusements, Mickey's creation, became the ultimate control machine for huge media stuff without going fully public. By 2020, it owned 77.4% of Paramount Global's Class A voting shares, giving the family 80% say-so, while holding just 10% of the actual value. Like tech bigwigs Meta or Alphabet, this let them run the show on boards, mergers, and plans. Dual-class shares cut both ways. Great for founder power, but they can tick off other investors, like in Paramount's drama-filled fights. In 2018, merger tries between CBS and Viacom got blocked by suits, showing the heat. Still, for the Redstones, it was like a supercharged family trust, echoing how Mellons used their foundation to hold sway in money and art. Unlike Vanderbilt's blowing train cash on fancy houses and going broke by Gen 3, the Redstones system meant smart, steady handling. This made passing the torch easy. When Sumner couldn't lead in the 2010s, daughter Sherry took over, fighting through board wars to merge Viacom and CBS in 2019 into Paramount Global, worth $16 billion. These tools highlight old money's staying power, turning shaky new money into rock-solid strength. Sherry Ellen Redstone, born in 1954, is where the family fully embraces old money vibes. Unlike her father's aggressive deal-making, Sherry focuses on careful stewardship and generous philanthropy that enhances the family's reputation. Her approach to giving mirrors that of Andrew Mellon, who funded the National Gallery of Art, or the Rockefellers, who established universities and foundations. Sherry serves on the board of Combined Jewish Philanthropies, CJP, in Boston, an organization that raises over $50 million annually for Jewish causes worldwide. In her leadership role, she has supported initiatives in education, social services, and programs related to Israel, which align closely with her Jewish heritage. Additionally, as a trustee at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, a premier Harvard-affiliated research center, she contributes to funding cutting-edge oncology studies. In 2022, Sherry established an endowed chair at Massachusetts General Hospital for Cancer Genetics, motivated by her family's ongoing health challenges. Separately, in 2025, she personally faced a thyroid cancer diagnosis. She also sits on the board of the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation, where she helps preserve presidential history, and the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse. These involvements go beyond simple donations. They include active participation, networking with elite figures, and building lasting cultural impact. Through her venture firm, Advancit Capital, Sherry has invested millions in causes like women's empowerment and media literacy programs. This shift from profit-driven pursuits to impactful legacy building is a hallmark of old money. It elevates the Redstones from mere media moguls to respected philanthropists, similar to how the Carnegies transitioned from steel tycoons to founders of libraries. Sherry's efforts have helped soften the family's image, moving away from Sumner's combative persona. In wealthy families, marriages often serve as strategic power moves, a tactic mastered by old money dynasties like the Kennedys or the Onassises. The Redstones employed this strategy as well. Sumner's first marriage in 1947 was to Phyllis Gloria Raphael, the daughter of a Boston department store owner, which opened doors to influential Jewish business circles. The couple had 2 children, Brent and Sherry, but the marriage ended acrimoniously in 1999. His second marriage in 2002 was to Paula Fortunato, a school teacher 39 years his junior. It was shorter-lived, concluding in 2009 with a $72 million settlement, and seemed more personal than strategically planned. Sherry's 1980 marriage to Ira Korf, a rabbi and businessman with strong ties to influential Jewish networks, was more alliance-focused. Although they divorced in 1992, the union produced 3 children and expanded the family's connections. These marriages echo Aristotle Onassis' union with Jacqueline Kennedy, blending new wealth with established prestige. For the Redstones, such alliances help them gain entry into elite philanthropy and business spheres, reinforcing their transition to old money status. No ascent to prominence is without setbacks, and the Redstones' journey included scandals that reinforce the new money label. Issues like allegations of abuse, adultery, and public family feuds have been detailed in books such as Unscripted by Rachel Abrams and James B. Stewart. For instance, Sumner's estrangement from his son Brent led to inheritance lawsuits. In 2007, Brent sued over his exclusion from the family trust, eventually settling for $240 million. The 2010s brought even more turmoil. Disputes over Sumner's mental competency involving his girlfriends, Sidney Holland and Manuela Herzer, who were accused of manipulating him into giving them gifts worth $150 million, resulting in elder abuse lawsuits. Sherry's power struggles with CBS CEO Les Moonves, who was ousted in 2018 amid Me Too allegations, further fueled the chaos. These events evoked comparisons to Edward Dohany's Teapot Dome scandal, where new money ambition bred perceptions of corruption. Nevertheless, the family persevered by leveraging sharp legal strategies to resolve disputes privately. This resilience, combined with Sherry's steady leadership, enabled them to overcome the stigma, much like how the Hearsts recovered from controversies surrounding yellow journalism to maintain their enduring influence. At the core of the Redstone fortune was their dominance in media through national amusements. Paramount Global encompassed major assets like Paramount Pictures, the studio behind Titanic and The Godfather, MTV, CBS, and Nickelodeon, with a pre-2024 valuation exceeding $30 billion. Publishing and streaming services provided additional diversity. Real estate added significant value. Sumner's 15,000 square foot Beverly Park mansion in Los Angeles, featuring pools and theaters, sold for $27 million in 2021. Properties in Boston, including family homes and theater sites, kept them connected to their roots. Post-sale, Sherry's net worth is estimated at $500 million to $1 billion, while the family's assets once peaked at $14 billion. Unlike the Vanderbilts, who squandered their railroad fortune on lavish estates like Biltmore and faced decline, the Redstones emulated the Mellons' disciplined approach by reinvesting profits and using trusts for tax efficiency. Sumner Redstone's elder abuse by companions. In his twilight years, Sumner Redstone, the indomitable media tycoon, became profoundly vulnerable, ensnared in a web of manipulation and exploitation by two women who positioned themselves as his closest companions, Sidney Holland and Manuela Herzer. This case, spanning from approximately 2010 to 2019, exemplifies elder abuse in its most insidious forms: financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, and social isolation, targeting a man whose physical and cognitive decline left him susceptible to undue influence. The story of Redstone's abuse is a cautionary tale about the fragility of power in old age, illustrating how even individuals with immense wealth and resources can fall victim to those who exploit trust for personal gain. Court documents, lawsuits, and investigative reports, including those detailed in James B. Stewart and Rachel Abrams' book Unscripted, The Epic Battle for a Media Empire, and the Redstone Family Legacy, published in 2023, paint a vivid picture of how Holland and Herzer ingratiated themselves into Redstone's life, isolated him from his family, and siphoned off an estimated $150 million in cash, gifts, and assets. This exploitation occurred primarily between 2013 and 2015, a period when Redstone, then in his early 90s, was grappling with deteriorating health, including speech impairments, mobility issues, and cognitive challenges stemming from conditions like aspiration pneumonia and possible dementia-like symptoms. The abuse was later confirmed through legal proceedings, underscoring the systemic nature of elder mistreatment that affects millions annually, often going unreported due to shame, dependency, or family dynamics. To grasp the extent of this abuse, it's crucial to examine how Holland and Herzer entered and dominated Redstone's world. Sidney Holland, in her early 40s, when she met Redstone around 2010, was a former model and producer with a reputation for charisma and ambition. She swiftly became his live-in girlfriend, relocating to his luxurious Beverly Hills mansion in the gated Beverly Park community. Far from a mere romantic interest, Holland evolved into a gatekeeper, overseeing his daily routines, social engagements, and even business interactions. Manuela Herzer, born in Argentina and also in her 40s during the key period, had been part of Redstone's circle since the late 1990s, starting as a friend and confidant. By the 2010s, she too resided with him intermittently, creating a dynamic where the two women shared influence over his life. Their presence filled a void left by Redstone's strained family relationships and recent divorce. But what began as companionship quickly turned into a calculated takeover. Their integration into Redstone's life aligned with his growing isolation from established support systems. With family bonds already frayed, particularly with his daughter Sherry Redstone, who was involved in the family business, but often at odds with him over succession, Holland and Herzer stepped in as surrogates. However, their roles soon extended to control, deciding who could access him and under what circumstances. By 2013, they were not only enjoying opulent lifestyles, funded by Redstone, but also actively managing his environment to minimize external interference. This setup allowed them to exploit his vulnerabilities without oversight, turning his mansion into a fortress where their influence reigned supreme. The isolation tactics employed by Holland and Herzer were deliberate and devastating, fitting the classic patterns of elder abuse as defined by organizations like the National Center on Elder Abuse. Isolation involves restricting a victim's interactions with loved ones and professionals to heighten dependency and evade detection. In Redstone's situation, the women allegedly prevented Sherry from visiting or speaking with her father for prolonged stretches, using fabricated reasons or outright refusals. Legal filings from 2015 document multiple occasions where Sherry tried to connect only to be blocked, with claims that Redstone preferred not to see her. This wasn't a simple matter of personal choice, it was a maneuver to eliminate potential challengers to their authority. Accounts from household employees, as reported in Fortune magazine's 2016 series, The Disturbing Decline of Sumner Redstone, describe how Holland and Herzer monitored communications, vetted visitors, and manipulated Redstone's messages to depict him as opposed to his family. One aide recalled Herzer using threats of withdrawal, such as denying companionship if Redstone attempted contact with Sherry, capitalizing on his emotional fragility and fear of loneliness. This control extended to Redstone's professional realm. As the controlling shareholder of major media entities, his health decline was a sensitive issue, and the women helped perpetuate the illusion of his competence. They reportedly prepared him for scripted appearances on conference calls, where his garbled speech became noticeable by 2014. By limiting access, they kept key executives like then Viacom CEO Philippe Doman unaware of the full scope of his impairments, allowing their operations to continue undisturbed. The emotional impact on Redstone was profound. Medical notes later revealed in court indicated bouts of depression, paranoia, and confusion, worsened by the women's coercive behaviors. They allegedly dangled promises of loyalty and intimacy in return for compliance, preying on his need for connection in his advancing years. At the heart of the abuse lay financial exploitation, with Holland and Herzer extracting a staggering $150 million from 2013 to 2015. This wasn't sporadic generosity, but a patterned draining of resources. According to the 2016 lawsuit filed by Redstone's team, the women pressured him into issuing checks amounting to $45 million directly, $20 million to Holland and $25 million to Herzer, framed as gifts or investments for their personal projects. Holland, for instance, used the funds to buy a $7.5 million property in Beverly Hills and bolster her production endeavors. Herzer invested in high-end real estate in New York and Los Angeles, including a $20 million residence. Additional perks included millions in jewelry, fashion items, artwork, and extravagant travel via private jets, all billed to Redstone. Even more alarming was their infiltration of his estate plans. By 2014, both had been incorporated into his will, with Hertzer potentially inheriting up to $70 million and Holland a comparable share, including equity in his media assets. This was facilitated through undue influence, as claimed in court, during a time when Redstone's health was faltering. Following a 2014 hospitalization for pneumonia, he relied on feeding tubes and therapy for swallowing difficulties, while his mental acuity waned. Descriptions from observers noted him as disoriented and malleable. Despite this, he executed documents favoring the women, often without neutral advisors present. The $150 million outflow strained Redstone's finances so severely that, per the 2016 filings, he borrowed $100 million from his holding company, National Amusements, to offset the losses, a stark irony for someone known for financial prowess. The Redstone family's reaction blended alarm with restraint, motivated by safeguarding his reputation and avoiding scandal. Sherry, who would later helm the empire, learned of the issues around 2014, but encountered obstacles in addressing them. Early efforts to intervene were thwarted, with Holland and Hertzer casting Sherry as an adversary to Redstone's independence. Opting for privacy, the family avoided public exposure, worried that revelations of abuse would undermine his image as a formidable leader. This approach echoes tactics used by influential families historically to conceal weaknesses, prolonging the ordeal but eventually paving the way for resolution. Tensions peaked in 2015. In August, Redstone terminated his engagement to Holland upon learning of her affair with actor George Pilgrim, whom she had financially supported using his money. She was promptly removed from the premises. Hertzer lingered until October 2015, when Redstone revoked her health care proxy and will provisions, possibly influenced by family input. Hertzer retaliated with a November 2015 lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court contesting his mental fitness and demanding reinstatement, asserting her actions stemmed from concern. This action paradoxically illuminated the abuse, necessitating evaluations that exposed his susceptibilities. The ensuing legal confrontations culminated in 2016. Redstone resigned as executive chairman of CBS and Viacom in February amid the competency dispute. The April 2016 trial included damning evidence. Redstone's deposition video depicted him laboring to respond coherently, while testimonies from caregivers highlighted the women's isolating and manipulative strategies, such as leveraging affection for concessions. Judge David Cowan ruled in May 2016 that Redstone retained sufficient capacity for decisions, rejecting Hertzer's claim, but the process unveiled the extent of the mistreatment. In October 2016, Redstone countered with a lawsuit against both women for elder abuse, fiduciary breach, fraud, and emotional distress. The filing accused them of manipulating and emotionally abusing him through sexual control and lavish spending. It demanded restitution of the $150 million, noting the debt incurred. Holland settled discreetly, returning some items, while Hertzer contested, filing for defamation. Litigation persisted until a January 2019 settlement, where Hertzer repaid $3.25 million, a minimal portion, but all suits concluded. Holland's terms stayed confidential. By Redstone's death in August 2020 at 97, Sherry had consolidated control over the rebranded Paramount Global. This episode illuminates elder abuse's complexity. Financially, it breached California's elder abuse laws via undue influence. Emotionally, the isolation violated protective statutes. It parallels cases like Brooke Astor's 2007 exploitation by her son, leading to neglect amid wealth, or Huguette Clark's 2000s caregiver abuses yielding $30 million in gifts. Historically, it resembles elite families' concealments, such as the Kennedys' management of Rosemary's 1941 lobotomy for image preservation. The Redstones' initial discretion extended the abuse, but led to accountability. Redstone's ordeal emphasizes that betrayal spares no one. It calls for proactive measures, estate safeguards, family vigilance to shield the elderly. As populations age, such stories urge societal reforms against exploitation, regardless of status. Sherry Redstone's secret manipulation of Sumner's trust. By 2016, Sumner Redstone found himself in a state of profound vulnerability, his physical and mental health having waned considerably, rendering him less able to exert the commanding influence he had once held. It was against this fragile backdrop that his daughter, Sherry Redstone, who had long been immersed in the intricate dynamics of the family business, emerged as a pivotal actor in determining the future direction of the Redstone legacy. Allegations have persisted that Sherry did not merely await her opportunity, but instead devised a sophisticated scheme to consolidate her authority over the empire, a narrative that blurs the boundaries between high-stakes corporate intrigue and personal, familial betrayal, evoking the plot lines of a gripping, dramatic epic. The allegations surrounding Sherry Redstone's actions delve into a labyrinth of covert operations that, according to various claims, extended far beyond conventional strategies of corporate governance or familial persuasion. Rather than confining her efforts to boardroom alliances or appeals to familial bonds, Sherry is accused of having adopted a surveillance-like approach, enlisting the aid of her father's nurses, individuals entrusted with his daily care during his declining years, to procure sensitive information about his closest associates. These associates were not peripheral figures. They included live-in companions who exerted substantial influence over Sumner's personal affairs and, conceivably, his decisions regarding his vast holdings and estate. Prominent among them were Manuela Herzer and Sidney Holland, women who resided with Sumner and enjoyed a level of intimacy that positioned them as potential inheritors or influencers in his decisions. According to the accusations, Sherry leveraged the nurses to obtain granular, almost voyeuristic insights into these companions' lives, their interactions with Sumner, their conversations, and even their private activities. The purported goal was unequivocal: to neutralize their presence and eliminate any competition they posed to her ambitions. This strategy, if accurate as alleged, proved extraordinarily effective in reshaping the power structure. The companions were systematically removed from Sumner's orbit. Herzer and Holland were effectively banished. Their roles in his life terminated abruptly. In the vacuum created by their departure, Sherry is said to have facilitated alterations to Sumner's trust, modifications that were far from trivial. These changes fundamentally reconfigured the governance of his estate, tilting the balance decisively in her direction. By mid-2016, the trust had been amended in ways that enhanced Sherry's control over the future of National Amusements, the family holding company that held commanding voting shares in Viacom and CBS. This was no minor revision. It represented a seismic shift in authority, positioning Sherry as the preeminent successor. The process unfolded with a calculated subtlety, shrouded in privacy, to mitigate any immediate reputational damage or financial turbulence that a scandal might unleash. This episode resonates with the annals of historical power plays, where heirs or influencers resorted to subterfuge to claim their perceived rightful place. It mirrors the machinations of medieval dynasties, where alliances were forged in shadows, rivals spied upon, and inheritances rewritten to favor the ambitious. Consider the maneuvers of Judith of Bavaria in the 9th century, who navigated the treacherous politics of the Carolingian Empire to secure the throne for her son, Charles the Bald. Judith, as the second wife of Emperor Louis the Pious, faced fierce opposition from her stepchildren, who viewed her as a threat to their inheritance. Historical accounts such as those in the Annals of Saint Bertin detail how Judith was accused of adultery and witchcraft by her enemies in an attempt to discredit her and diminish her influence at court. Undeterred, she allegedly orchestrated alliances with key nobles and clergy, maneuvering behind the scenes to ensure that upon Louis's death in 840, the empire was divided in a manner that favored Charles. The Treaty of Verdun in 843, which formalized the division, saw Charles inherit West Francia, an outcome Judith had tirelessly advocated for through diplomatic intrigue and strategic marriages for her children. Her actions, often portrayed as ruthless ambition, involved sidelining rivals through rumor and exile, much like the alleged ousting of Sumner's companions. Sherry's purported tactics echo this historical precedent, updating ancient scheming with modern tools like informant networks, all in pursuit of dynastic control. But Judith's story also highlights the gendered scrutiny such women faced. Labeled as manipulative, her efforts were likely driven by a mix of maternal protection and political survival in a male-dominated era. Delving further into the specifics of Sherry's alleged involvement reveals a tapestry woven from legal battles and eyewitness accounts. The accusations gained public traction primarily through lawsuits initiated by Manuela Herzer, one of Sumner's ousted companions, who refused to retreat silently after her expulsion. In late 2015, Herzer filed a high-profile lawsuit challenging Sumner's mental competency, arguing that he was incapable of making sound decisions about his estate and that external influences had manipulated him. Although that initial suit was dismissed in May 2016 by a Los Angeles judge who ruled that Sumner was competent enough to manage his affairs, it opened the floodgates for further litigation. Herzer followed up with a federal RICO, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations lawsuit, in 2016 against Sherry Redstone and her son Tyler Korff, accusing them of conspiring with Sumner's nurses to spy on her and orchestrate her removal. Court documents from this case, including a detailed complaint filed in Los Angeles Superior Court, painted a vivid picture of espionage-like activities. For instance, emails purportedly from nurse Joseph Octaviano to Sherry and Tyler were cited, detailing intimate observations of Herzer's interactions with Sumner. These communications allegedly included reports on conversations, daily routines, and even emotional states, providing Sherry with ammunition to portray Herzer as exploitative. Sidney Holland, Sumner's other prominent companion, echoed these claims in her own lawsuit filed in December 2016. Holland accused Sherry and a team of nurses of privacy violations and intentional interference with her expected inheritance, claiming that the surveillance extended to hidden recordings and intercepted communications. According to Holland's filings, the nurses were incentivized, possibly through financial inducements or promises of job security, to act as informants. Testimonies from the nurses themselves obtained during depositions lent credence to these allegations. One nurse, in a sworn statement, admitted to relaying information to Sherry about the companion's behaviors, framing it as concern for Sumner's well-being. However, critics argued this was a facade for a coordinated effort to discredit and displace them. The lawsuits revealed that Sumner had previously gifted millions to Herzer and Holland, including cash, properties, and provisions in his will, which were revoked following their ousting. Herzer, for example, claimed she lost out on a $70 million inheritance due to Sherry's interference. These legal skirmishes were not isolated. They intersected with countersuits from Sumner himself. In October 2016, Sumner filed a lawsuit against Herzer and Holland, accusing them of elder abuse and undue influence, alleging they had manipulated him for financial gain during his vulnerable state. His attorney, Robert Klieger, presented evidence in court suggesting the women had isolated Sumner from his family and coerced gifts. This reciprocal litigation created a maelstrom of public scrutiny, with media outlets like the New York Times and Vanity Fair dissecting the family drama in exhaustive detail. The cases dragged on for years, culminating in settlements in 2019. Sumner settled with Herzer for an undisclosed amount, while Holland's suit was also resolved out of court. These resolutions, while avoiding further courtroom revelations, did little to dispel the aura of intrigue surrounding Sherry's role. Yet, the narrative is not monolithic. Interpretations of Sherry's actions vary widely. Defenders portray her as a dutiful daughter safeguarding her father from predatory influences. Sumner's advanced age and health issues, including a reported inability to speak clearly due to a feeding tube, made him susceptible to exploitation, they argue. Sources close to the family, as reported in outlets like Variety, suggest Sherry's interventions were motivated by genuine concern, with the nurses' reports serving as protective intelligence rather than malicious spying. Skeptics, however, view it as a calculated power grab, pointing to the timing. The trust amendments occurred shortly after the companion's removal, consolidating Sherry's control over National Amusement's 80% voting stake in Viacom-CBS, later Paramount Global. Legal experts, in analyses from publications like The Hollywood Reporter, note that while the trust changes are indisputable facts documented in probate records, the extent of manipulation remains contested due to the lack of a definitive smoking gun evidence, such as explicit directives from Sherry to falsify information. This ambiguity invites broader historical comparisons, enriching our understanding of such power struggles. The Trastamara dynasty's treatment of Joanna of Castile in the late 15th and early 16th centuries offers a striking parallel. Joanna, heir to the thrones of Castile and Aragon, was sidelined through propagated rumors of her madness following the death of her husband, Philip the Handsome, in 1506. Historical records, including chronicles by Peter Martyr d'Anghiera, detail how Philip, during his lifetime and later her father, Ferdinand II of Aragon, and son Charles V, exaggerated Joanna's grief and eccentric behaviors, such as her refusal to bury Philip's body, to justify confining her to the castle of Tordesillas for nearly 50 years. This confinement allowed them to rule in her name, effectively usurping her authority. Rumors of insanity were disseminated through court gossip and official decrees, undermining her legitimacy without direct confrontation. Sherry's alleged use of nurses to gather dirt on Sumner's companions mirrors this tactic. Instead of open challenge, vulnerabilities were exploited to portray them as unfit, paving the way for their removal and her ascension. Joanna's story, debated by modern historians like Bethany Aram in her biography, Juana the Mad, Sovereignty and Dynasty in Renaissance Europe, questions whether her madness was genuine or a fabricated pretext for patriarchal control, much like debates over Sherry's protective versus ambitious motives. Similarly, the Habsburg dynasty under Maximilian I provides another lens. Maximilian, Holy Roman Emperor from 1493 to 1519, was renowned for his strategic maneuvering to secure his lineage's dominance. To ensure his grandson Charles V's election as emperor in 1519, Maximilian engaged in extensive bribery of the 7 prince-electors, as documented in contemporary accounts like those of the Fugger banking family, who financed much of the operation. Historians such as Thomas A. Brady Jr. in German Histories in the Age of Reformations describe how Maximilian pledged vast sums, equivalent to millions in modern currency, to sway votes, outbidding rivals like Francis I of France. This was not mere corruption, but a calculated investment in dynastic continuity, involving secret negotiations and promises of territorial concessions. Sherry's supposed incentives to nurses resemble this: trading information for loyalty, akin to bribes, to influence outcomes in her favor. Unlike overt warfare, these were subtle transactions that preserved the facade of legitimacy. Zooming out, this saga transcends mere family discord, intersecting with the colossal stakes of media dominance. Viacom and CBS, under the Redstone umbrella, were not just corporations. They were arbiters of culture, influencing billions through content creation and distribution. The 2019 merger of Viacom and CBS into Viacom-CBS, rebranded Paramount Global in 2022, was a direct outgrowth of Sherry's consolidated power, a $30 billion deal that unified assets like Nickelodeon, Showtime, and BET under one roof. As of July 18, 2025, recent developments underscore her enduring influence despite challenges. Institutional Shareholder Services, ISS, in June 2025, recommended against re-electing Sherry and 3 other directors to Paramount Global's board, citing governance concerns and stock underperformance. However, at the July 2025 annual meeting, shareholders elected all nominees, including Sherry as chair, affirming her grip amid ongoing sale discussions, such as the potential Skydance Media merger, which remains under review by the Federal Communications Commission, FCC. These events highlight how her 2016 maneuvers laid the foundation for sustained control, even as critics question her stewardship. The fallout from these events was multifaceted and enduring. Herzer's lawsuits, while settled, ignited a media frenzy that exposed the Redstone family's fractures. Publications like Vanity Fair ran in-depth exposés, with unredacted complaints revealing accusations of bribery. Herzer claimed Sherry paid nurses to fabricate stories turning Sumner against her. The public spectacle eroded trust in the company's leadership, contributing to stock volatility. Viacom shares dipped amid the 2016 scandals. Internally, it strained family ties. Sherry's relationship with her brother Brent had already soured over business disputes, leading to his 2007 ousting from the trust. Externally, it prompted broader discussions on elder abuse in high-net-worth families, influencing legal reforms in California probate laws to better protect vulnerable seniors. At its core, Sherry's alleged manipulation prompts reflection on the interplay of loyalty, ambition, and legacy. Was she a guardian preserving her father's empire from opportunists, or a strategist seizing power through ethically dubious means? Historical precedents suggest such actions often blend both, driven by the imperatives of survival in competitive arenas. Judith of Bavaria faced exile and accusations, but ultimately secured her son's kingdom. Joanna's confinement enabled Spanish unification under Charles V. Maximilian's bribes entrenched Habsburg hegemony for centuries. Sherry, in securing the trust amendments, ensured the Redstone influence persisted beyond Sumner's 2020 death. navigating mergers and digital disruptions. Sherry's secret boardroom power grab. In the spring of 2018, the corporate landscape at CBS Corporation was a cauldron of simmering tensions. With Lise Moonves firmly entrenched as its chairman and CEO, overseeing a media powerhouse that dominated broadcast television, news, and entertainment. Moonves, renowned for his transformative leadership that had revitalized CBS into a ratings juggernaut, commanded unwavering loyalty from a board of directors largely aligned with his vision. However, this stability was illusory, as Shari Redstone, through her family's controlling interest in National Amusements, the holding company that wielded approximately 80% of the voting shares in both CBS and Viacom, harbored ambitions that extended far beyond passive oversight. Her goal was unambiguous: to orchestrate the recombination of CBS and Viacom, entities that had been separated in 2006 under her father Sumner Redstone's directive, into a unified media colossus capable of competing in an era dominated by streaming giants like Netflix and Amazon. Achieving this required dominance over the CBS board, a body resistant to her influence and protective of Moonves' autonomy. Allegations emerged that Shari did not pursue this objective through overt negotiations or public campaigns, but instead executed a clandestine strategy to reshape the board by systematically replacing Moonves' staunch allies with directors more amenable to her directives, all while maintaining a veil of secrecy to avert shareholder unrest and market volatility. The accusations portray Shari's approach as a meticulously crafted operation, extending beyond routine corporate maneuvering into the realm of strategic infiltration. Rather than engaging in direct confrontations that could invite scrutiny, she is said to have leveraged her position at National Amusements to influence board nominations and transitions indirectly. This involved identifying vulnerabilities among existing directors, such as those nearing retirement, facing conflicts of interest, or susceptible to persuasion, and facilitating their departures in favor of candidates who shared her strategic outlook. For instance, reports from the period highlight subtle shifts in board composition, where long-standing members loyal to Moonves were phased out through resignations or non-renewals, replaced by individuals with ties to Shari's network or a demonstrated openness to the merger concept. This was not a wholesale purge, which would have triggered alarms, but a gradual recalibration, akin to reshaping a mosaic one tile at a time. The secrecy was paramount. Any perception of a hostile takeover could have precipitated legal challenges, investor flight, or a plunge in stock prices, jeopardizing the very empire she sought to consolidate. By operating in the shadows, Shari allegedly mitigated these risks, ensuring that the changes appeared as organic evolutions rather than orchestrated overhauls. This narrative of covert boardroom engineering draws striking parallels to historical precedents of dynastic intrigue, where power was consolidated through subtle machinations rather than brute force. It evokes the maneuvers of Judith of Bavaria in the 9th century Carolingian Empire, who, as the second wife of Emperor Louis the Pious, faced vehement opposition from her stepchildren intent on preserving their inheritance. Historical chronicles, such as the Annals of Saint-Bertin, recount how Judith was vilified with accusations of adultery and sorcery to erode her courtly influence. Yet she countered with deft alliances among nobles and clergy, orchestrating behind-the-scenes diplomacy and strategic unions for her offspring. Following Louis's death in 840, her efforts culminated in the Treaty of Verdun in 843, which allocated West Francia to her son, Charles the Bald, a triumph secured through rumor-mongering, exiles, and calculated sidelining of adversaries. Sherry's purported strategy mirrors this. Instead of open warfare against Moonves' board, she allegedly employed influence to displace loyalists, modernizing Judith's tactics with corporate tools like nomination committees and shareholder proxies. Moreover, Judith's saga underscores the gendered lens through which such ambitions are viewed. Often branded as manipulative, her actions blended maternal safeguarding with survival in a patriarchal domain, much like debates surrounding Sherry's motivations as a daughter preserving her family's legacy. The allegations of Sherry's boardroom power grab gained traction amid escalating conflicts in 2018. Court documents and media reports from that year reveal a timeline of escalating friction. In January 2018, Sherry publicly advocated for exploring a Viacom-CBS merger. A proposal met with resistance from Moonves, who viewed it as diluting CBS's strength. By May, the CBS board, fearing interference, voted to issue a special dividend that would dilute National Amusement's voting power, a move Sherry swiftly countered by amending CBS bylaws to require a 90% supermajority for such actions, as detailed in a lawsuit filed by National Amusements against CBS. This legal volley exposed underlying board divisions, with Moonves' allies pushing back against what they perceived as Sherry's overreach. Amid this, whispers of board reshuffling emerged. For example, directors like Charles Gifford, a Moonves confidant, faced scrutiny over alleged confrontations with Sherry, including a reported incident where he grabbed her face during a heated discussion, as recounted in court filings. Such episodes fueled claims that Sherry was quietly lobbying for the removal of antagonistic figures, replacing them with more neutral or supportive members. A pivotal source illuminating these dynamics is the 2023 book Unscripted: The Epic Battle for a Media Empire and the Redstone Family Legacy, by James B. Stewart and Rachel Abrams. The tome chronicles Sherry's ascent amid familial and corporate turmoil, detailing how she navigated boardroom politics to align CBS's governance with her vision. According to the book, Sherry's strategy involved cultivating relationships with potential directors and leveraging advisory firms to vet candidates sympathetic to the merger. It describes instances where Moonves' loyalists, such as those on the compensation or governance committees, were encouraged to step down under the guise of routine turnover, only to be succeeded by individuals like Joseph Ianiello, who later played key roles in merger negotiations. The authors draw on interviews and internal documents to depict Sherry as a resilient tactician, countering Moonves' dominance by methodically eroding his board support. Corroborating reports from outlets like the New York Times and Variety in 2018 highlight board changes, such as the resignation of Arnold Kopelson and the addition of figures with less allegiance to Moonves, timing that aligned suspiciously with escalating merger talks. Yet these accounts are not without controversy. Interpretations of Sherry's role vary, with some viewing her actions as legitimate stewardship rather than a grab for power. Defenders argue that board evolution was inevitable amid CBS's strategic pivots, and Sherry's influence stemmed from her legitimate controlling stake. Legal experts, as cited in The Hollywood Reporter, note that while board nominations are documented in SEC filings, showing shifts like the 2018 addition of directors post-litigation, the absence of explicit evidence, such as emails dictating replacements, leaves room for debate. No smoking gun exists, much like the veiled negotiations and historical power plays, preserving plausible deniability. Expanding the historical lens, Sherry's alleged tactics resonate with the Trastamara dynasty's consolidation in 15th century Spain. During the Compromise of Caspe in 1412, Ferdinand of Antequera secured the Aragonese throne through a web of bribes and alliances, as chronicled by contemporaries like Geronimo Zurita. Rather than avert claims, Ferdinand's supporters dispersed funds to electors, ensuring victory without overt conflict. Sherry's purported influence over board selections echoes this: trading loyalty for positions, a corporate equivalent of bribery, to tilt governance without fanfare. Similarly, the House of Savoy's 1858 Plombières Agreement with Napoleon III was a clandestine pact that facilitated Italian unification through territorial concessions and secret diplomacy, mirroring Sherry's behind closed doors maneuvering to avoid public backlash. The stakes of this power struggle were immense, transcending personal ambition to encompass the fate of a media behemoth. CBS, under Moonves, generated billions through hits like The Big Bang Theory and NCIS, while Viacom boasted assets like Paramount Pictures and MTV. A merger promised synergies in content distribution amid cord-cutting trends, creating Viacom CBS, later Paramount Global, valued at over $30 billion. Sherry's boardroom efforts were crucial. Without aligned directors, Moonves could block the deal, as evidenced by his May 2018 ultimatum to resign if her control wasn't curbed per court allegations. The Talcha Me Too revelations against Moonves in July 2018, detailed in Ronan Farrow's New Yorker exposés, accelerated his September ouster, further shifting board dynamics in Sherry's favor. This intersection of corporate intrigue and cultural reckoning, as explored in Unscripted, amplified the drama, with Sherry's moves positioning her to capitalize on the vacuum. The fallout was profound and multifaceted. By late 2018, the CBS board had transformed, with Moonves' exit paving the way for interim leadership more open to merger discussions. Legal battles subsided with settlements, but the episode eroded trust. CBS shares fluctuated amid uncertainty, dipping over 10% during peak litigation. Internally, it strained relationships, exacerbating rifts with Sherry's brother Brent, already ousted from family trusts in 2007. Externally, it sparked governance debates, influencing shareholder activism, and calls for reforms in dual-class stock structures. The merger's fruition in December 2019 validated Sherry's strategy, unifying assets like Nickelodeon and CBS News under one roof. As of July 18, 2025, Sherry's legacy endures amid ongoing challenges at Paramount Global. Despite ISS's June 2025 recommendation against her re-election, citing problematic capital structures, shareholders affirmed her as chair at the July 2nd meeting. The pending Skydance merger, announced in July 2024 for $8.4 billion, remains under FCC review, complicated by President Trump's $20 billion lawsuit against CBS over a 60 Minutes edit. Sherry's spring 2025 thyroid cancer diagnosis, with an excellent prognosis, adds a personal layer, yet she maintains activities. Post-merger, she plans to exit the board, handing reins to David Ellison. At its essence, Sherry's alleged 2018 boardroom power grab prompts introspection on ambition's interplay with ethics. Was she a custodian safeguarding her inheritance, or a shrewd operator bending rules? Historical analogs suggest a fusion, propelled by competitive exigencies. Judith secured her son's realm despite exile. The Trastamaras bribed their way to power. Savoy's secrets forged Italy. Sherry's triumphs ensured Redstone endurance beyond Sumner's 2020 passing, steering through digital upheavals. Brent Redstone's secret buyout and estrangement. Brent Redstone. Born in 1951, Brent was the older of Sumner's two kids, with Phyllis Gloria Raphael, married in 1947. Phyllis, from humble roots, offered a grounding influence amid Sumner's intensity, though their 52-year union simmered with underlying strains that surfaced dramatically later. Brent immersed himself in the family's expanding ventures from childhood, raised in Dedham, Massachusetts, close to National Amusement's base, observing his father's unyielding grind. Yet Brent's character veered from Sumner's fierce competitiveness. He was seen as relaxed, reserved, and even-tempered, valuing honesty above ruthless tactics. After earning an undergraduate degree from the University of Colorado and a law degree from Suffolk University in Boston, Brent spent 14 years as an assistant district attorney in Suffolk County from 1977 to 1991. Handling everything from narcotics cases to murders, he earned respect for his equitable approach and commitment to justice, steering clear of publicity in a field where ego often reigns, a stark opposite to Sumner's flair for the limelight. Leaving the prosecutor's office, Brent shifted to private civil law in Denver for 2 years, drawn to Colorado's tranquil Rockies for a calmer existence far from eastern bustle. Family duties pulled him back in the early 1990s, landing him as an executive at Viacom's Showtime, managing legal and day-to-day affairs. He served on Viacom's board from 1991 to 2003, pushing for principled oversight and sustainable growth. His ideas often conflicted with Sumner's dictatorial methods, where micromanagement and solo calls dominated, versus Brent's push for teamwork in boardrooms. This personality clash rendered Brent an improbable heir. His sister Sherry, born in 1954, stepped up as the preferred one. Sherry, after a Boston University law degree and social work stints, entered National Amusements in 1994, rising to president by 2000 and vice chair at CBS and Viacom, cementing her as Sumner's key ally through operational involvement and forward-thinking plans. The rift's origins deepened during Sumner's 1999 divorce from Phyllis after over half a century, a bitter fight yielding a $150 million payout. Phyllis initiated it with a $3 billion claim, charging Sumner with infidelity and harshness, including numerous affairs and emotional neglect fueled by his obsession with work. The case dragged 3 years, concluding in 2002 with Phyllis getting around $100 to $150 million plus assets and alimony. It widened family divides. Brent backed his mother fully, offering support through the turmoil, while Sherry stood by Sumner, upholding his stance and staying loyal. Sumner saw Brent's position as disloyalty, intensifying the breach. This episode heightened conflicts as Sumner pushed his children to surrender voting shares in National Amusements to tighten his hold, a ploy Brent rejected as a scheme to calm markets during the divorce spotlight. Fearing Phyllis could seize half the company and destabilize Viacom and CBS stocks, Sumner pressed for share transfers into his trust, framing it as legacy protection. Sherry assented, gaining a flexible trust that boosted her status, but Brent held firm, believing it eroded his independence. This defiance branded him a dissenter, resistant to endorsing his father's whims blindly. Tactics involved tense private discussions, where threats of exclusion loomed, eroding their bond further. By 2003, Brent lost his Viacom board seat, a reprisal for his self-reliance. His sidelining frustrated him, particularly as Sherry was named successor in 2005, amassing roles that highlighted her dynastic prominence. Sherry's ascent included direct theater management and digital adaptations, solidifying her father's confidence. Brent, meanwhile, withdrew to Colorado, settling on a 625-acre ranch in Evergreen bought in the 1990s, complete with expansive vistas and horse amenities, embodying his media retreat. Tensions boiled over by 2006 with Brent's suit in Maryland Circuit Court against Sumner and Sherry, aiming to dismantle the $8 billion firm and cash out his 1/6 share, charging mismanagement, personal profiteering, and siphoning millions. Accusations detailed isolation. Sumner skipped board gatherings for years, compelling Brent to sign phony records for huge loans aiding his own finances. Examples included delaying info on big deals, like a $425 million rescue of Sumner's debts from company coffers, and favoring personal stock plays in Viacom and Midway Games, where he allegedly snatched chances from the business. Board spots at Viacom and CBS dangled income, authority, and status tied to Sumner allegiance, suggesting Brent's removal was payback for opposition. Fundamentally, the case contended Sumner vowed equal involvement for Brent and Sherry since gifting shares in 1968, a vow shattered by Sherry favoritism. Brent charged Sherry with abetting by aligning votes, barring him from vital choices. It unveiled brother-sister competition. Brent felt sidelined while Sherry enjoyed privileges like titles and intel. Beyond money, this was a bold challenge to a father-led regime valuing dominance over fairness, paralleling Rockefeller sibling clashes over oil trusts or Vanderbilt air fights eroding rail wealth via excess and disputes. For the Redstones, the action threatened to reveal weaknesses eroding trust in Paramount Global's steadiness. The 14-page filing spotlighted lapses like absent board protocols, risking SEC probes. National Amusements dismissed it as baseless, portraying it as Brent leveraging courts for cash in a domestic spat, lamenting his misuse of justice for gain. Sumner felt disheartened and humiliated by the exposure, worried it might alarm investors and draw rival eyes from Disney or Comcast. The claims uncovered psychological layers. Sumner's control intensified after surviving a 1979 hotel blaze, with grave burns heightening his dominance. Brent, shaped by legal ethics, craved fairness. Resolution arrived in 2007 via private accord. National Amusements bought back Brent's stake for $240 million, cutting his business links. This sum, notable yet just 3% of the $8 billion valuation, emphasized his limited sway. Afterward, Sumner controlled 80% voting shares, Sherry 20%, paving her leadership way. Non-disclosure terms shrouded specifics, averting more Redstone reputational harm, akin to Astor secrecy masking 19th century quarrels to uphold real estate prestige. The payout secured Brent's finances, enabling full Colorado immersion. He grew the ranch to 667 acres, prioritizing privacy with wife Ann Vanderwerken and kin. In 2025, they sold it for $10 million, a evergreen record, an hour from Denver, encompassing wide lands, primary home and outbuildings, signaling post-rift affluence and total legacy separation. After, Brent shunned spotlights, appearing sporadically in Colorado for charity or conservation, never returning to commerce. The buyout's ripple effects transcended cash, illuminating Redstone power safeguards. The dual-class framework, family-held Class A supervotes, barred outside meddling, like Ford Automotive Mastery. It eased Brent's removal without control erosion or investor ballots. Yet it fueled instability views, evoking 1920s Teapot Dome scandals, where oil magnate greed sparked corruption tales and kin strife. Brent's alienation turned cautionary in family lore, shaping future events. In 2016, his daughter Karen entered a suit questioning Sumner's capacity during rows with ex-partners Manuela Herzer and Sidney Holland. Karen, distant from her grandfather, reported seeing paper destruction at his Beverly Hills estate, alleging manipulation in his weakened condition. This echoed Brent's complaints, depicting Sumner as alone and swayed by non-relatives. Sherry's buyout involvement and later oversight stressed heritage via giving and savvy direction. She joined boards for combined Jewish philanthropies, Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and John F. Kennedy Library Foundation, directing riches to vital efforts. Gifts like a 2022 cancer genetics chair at Massachusetts General Hospital, spurred by kin health woes, including her 2025 thyroid cancer, diagnosed early that year, leading to May surgery, resembled Andrew Mellon's 1930s National Gallery funding, leveraging fortune for lasting societal marks. Marriages bolstered alliances. Sumner's with Phyllis built early Boston Jewish links, Sherry's to Ira Korf, divorced 1992, widened giving circles, and her 2000 remarriage to Rabbi Yitzhak. Aharon Korf deepened community bonds, similar to Aristotle Onassis's 1968 union with Jacqueline Kennedy for status. Still, Brent's episode left lasting marks on the fortune. Holdings like the Beverly Park estate sold $27 million in 2021 post-Sumner's 2020 passing. Boston sites with founding theaters and media gems, Paramount's The Godfather and Titanic, CBS's 60 Minutes trove, endured via careful stewardship, dodging Vanderbilt extravagance that impoverished descendants by the 1900s. The 2024 National Amusements Paramount stake sale to Skydance for $8 billion, yielding $2.4 billion family net, finalized amid 2025 updates with closure-eyed for early year, showed flexibility against streaming giants like Netflix and Amazon, recalling Rockefeller 1910 sales funding charity while retaining clout. Brent's covert buyout and distancing capture the family's core strains. The 2007 pact, veiled by silence pacts, confirmed the $240 million and exit via quiet channels. A strategic cut to safeguard the realm, it spotlighted personal tolls, a son compensated to fade, tasking Sherry with corporate skirmishes like the 2019 Viacom CBS reunion into Paramount Global and Les Moonves' 2018 exit over Me Too misconduct claims. Dysfunction lingered, detailed in works like 2023's Unscripted by James B. Stewart and Rachel Abrams, exposing Sumner's schemes, Brent's sidelining, and Sherry's endurance from hidden records. Historical parallels heighten intrigue. Brent as a contemporary Forsaken successor like Anastasia Romanov, her throne assertions muddled by kin calamity, or his suit as a botched overthrow like Marie Antoinette's court plots, where divided loyalties spelled ruin. Looking back, Brent's uprising laid bare vulnerabilities in the Redstone's climb. From Mickey's Depression-era drive-ins, erected against bias and want, to Sumner's bias-molding worldwide media, they wielded sway over fun, society, and governance. MTV swayed votes via Rock the Vote. CBS upheld reporting norms. But ousting Brent for $240 million exposed dynasty math, authority over blood. The divorce's echoes fractured irreparably. Phyllis faded quietly till 2020. Sumner wed twice more. Paula Fortunato, 2002 to 2009, no third. His twilight featured health woes and 2016 competency suits, rejected yet underscoring solitude from prior rifts. As Sherry steers beyond 2024, guiding Paramount's digital shift, The tale affirms potent legacies forged at bond costs. Profound scrutiny shows cycles. Mickey's migrant pains bred Sumner's fighter ethos, fueling Brent's ethical defiance. The buyout severed more than ties, it cleaved inheritance. Brent opting calm over command, flourishing in Colorado peace as the empire evolved sans him. This subdued yet lasting segment underscores empires persist via riches and the burdens, chosen or forced, of their architects. The Redstone epic, mingling victory and sorrow, imparts insights on rule, succession, and family fortune equilibrium in U.S. enterprise. Michael Redstone's secret lawsuit against Sumner. Beneath the success of National Amusements in the early 2000s lay simmering family tensions that erupted in 2006 when a lawsuit accused Sumner of systematically undervaluing and manipulating shares in the family business during the 1970s and 1980s. This legal action sought damages estimated at $4.36 billion, exposing allegations of fraud, self-dealing, and breaches of fiduciary duty that threatened to unravel the dynasty. The family, acutely aware of the potential damage to the empire, went to great lengths to minimize publicity, treating the case as an internal matter rather than a public spectacle. This approach succeeded in keeping much of the saga out of the headlines, but the underlying conflicts revealed deep fractures bound by wealth, yet divided by ambition and perceived injustices. The roots of the lawsuit trace back to the foundational structure of the family fortune. National Amusements, originally Northeast Theater Corporation, was established in the 1930s. By the 1950s, it had grown into a thriving drive-in theater business, and in 1959, irrevocable trusts were set up to distribute shares among the grandchildren. These trusts held half of the company's 300 shares, 150 shares total, for the benefit of 4 grandchildren, positioning each to inherit an equal portion and reflecting a vision of family unity and legacy preservation. However, as leadership consolidated through aggressive expansions and acquisitions, these trusts became flashpoints for contention. The first major event cited in the 2006 lawsuit occurred in 1972 amid internal family strife. That year followed a lawsuit over control and valuation issues within National Amusements. The settlement drastically altered the trust structures. According to court documents from the 2006 filing, the agreement reduced the shares allocated to certain trusts from 50 to 33 and 1/3 shares each. Unilateral authority was granted to approve the repurchase of these shares by National Amusements. The allegation was that this reconfiguration was a calculated maneuver to diminish the value passed to one branch of the family. At the time, National Amusements was valued modestly, but its potential for growth was evident through expansions into cable television and film production. By undervaluing the shares during this settlement, setting them at prices far below their future worth, it allegedly ensured that one lineage would reap disproportionate benefits as the company ballooned in value. This 1972 transaction set the stage for the even more contentious 1984 redemption, which formed the crux of the claims. In 1984, the repurchase of the trust shares by National Amusements was orchestrated for a total of $21.4 million, representing approximately 45% of the company's ownership. The lawsuit detailed how this price was based on an appraisal that grossly undervalued the company's assets, omitting hundreds of millions in securities, real estate holdings, and other investments. The appraisal was conducted by an accountant with ties to the leadership, raising accusations of conflict of interest and lack of independent oversight. It was argued that no neutral legal counsel was provided to protect the interest of the beneficiaries, who were young adults at the time. Instead, the deal was framed as beneficial, but in reality, it stripped the trusts of their stakes just as National Amusements was poised for explosive growth. By the 2000s, those shares would control media assets worth billions, including majority voting power in Viacom and CBS. The estimation of $4.36 billion in damages stemmed from calculating the compounded value of those undervalued shares, adjusted for the company's meteoric rise. The decision to sue in 2006 was the culmination of decades of perceived slights. Benefiting from some support, including funding for education and employment opportunities, as detailed in a 2001 autobiography, underlying resentments persisted. The death of a sister in 1987 at age 33, and her son in a 2004 motorcycle accident at age 20, left one as the primary voice for that branch. The lawsuit, filed on November 3, 2006 in Massachusetts Superior Court in Boston, named key defendants and sought not only monetary damages, but also the rescission of the 1972 and 1984 transactions, aiming to restore the original trust holdings. The legal team argued breaches of fiduciary duties through self-dealing, prioritizing control over the company at the expense of the beneficiaries. They pointed to the absence of arm's-length negotiations and the concealment of true asset values as evidence of fraud. From the defense perspective, the allegations were baseless and untimely. A statement dismissed the suit as knowingly baseless and emphasized that the transactions were entirely proper and conducted decades earlier. The defense highlighted awareness of the deals at the time they occurred, suggesting ample opportunity to challenge them earlier. In pretrial motions, arguments were made that the statute of limitations for fraud claims, 3 years in Massachusetts, had long expired. The narrative portrayed acts of benevolence, such as support through personal challenges, to undermine credibility, painting the lawsuit as ungrateful rather than justified. Alignment in the defense complicated family dynamics and underscored divisions between branches. Efforts to keep the lawsuit under wraps were deliberate and effective, reflecting a broader strategy to safeguard public image. A public trial risking exposure of internal fraud allegations could have eroded investor confidence in companies where controlling stakes were held. Family members declined to comment publicly, maintaining a united front against external scrutiny. The lawsuit garnered some media attention, such as articles in major newspapers, but it never escalated into a tabloid frenzy. This containment mirrored tactics used by other wealthy dynasties, who quietly resolved inheritance disputes to avoid damaging their empires, or suppressed details of scandals involving mental health and finances to preserve industry dominance. Legal proceedings unfolded methodically, with initial discovery revealing intricate details of financial maneuvers. Documents from the 1972 settlement and 1984 redemption were uncovered, including appraisals that allegedly excluded key assets like real estate portfolios and investment securities. Testimonies from former family attorneys and trustees were sought to substantiate claims of undue influence. However, in July 2007, summary judgment was granted in favor of the defendants, dismissing the case as time-barred. The ruling stated awareness of the 1984 transaction at age 27 and that an independent trustee had knowledge of both deals without objecting. This decision invalidated the argument that the statute of limitations should begin in 2004, when fraud was purportedly discovered through documents from a separate family lawsuit. An appeal to the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court in 2008 remanded a portion of the case back to the lower court. The remanded claims centered on an alleged oral trust from 1959 asserted to entitle additional shares beyond the written trust. This oral agreement, if proven, could have bypassed the statute of limitations issues. The case proceeded to a 4-day bench trial in July 2009. Testimonies denied the existence of any oral trust, emphasizing that all distributions followed legal protocols. In a decision issued later that year, the judge ruled against the claims, finding insufficient evidence to establish the oral trust and concluding failure to meet the burden of proof, effectively ending the litigation. The final ruling in 2009 spared potential payouts of hundreds of millions, or even billions, depending on share valuations. No further appeals were pursued and no settlement details were publicly disclosed, suggesting resolution without additional concessions. The outcome reinforced control over the family empire, but left lingering bitterness. The defeat represented not just a financial loss, but a failure to rectify generational inequities. The case's low profile ensured the legacy remained largely untarnished, with leadership continuing until health issues forced retirement in 2016. This lawsuit exemplifies how immense wealth can fracture bonds, turning trusts into battlegrounds. The $4.36 billion claim was grounded in the exponential growth of national amusements, from a theater chain valued at millions in the 1980s to a media controller worth billions by the 2000s. Allegations of undervaluation highlight common pitfalls in family businesses, where subjective appraisals can mask self-interest. Estate law experts note such disputes often arise from ambiguous trust language or power imbalances, as seen with dual roles as trustee and company executive. Comparatively, the saga parallels other high-profile feuds over fortunes. Early 20th century battles over mining wealth involved similar accusations of share manipulation and trust breaches, resolved quietly to protect legacies. Likewise, a 2001 lawsuit over hotel trusts accused undervaluing assets, leading to a $900 million settlement but minimal public fallout. These cases underscore a pattern. Affluent families prioritize discretion, employing non-disclosure agreements and swift dismissals to contain damage. Beyond the courtroom, the lawsuit illuminated themes of power and accountability. Dominance allowed shaping narratives, portraying challengers as disgruntled rather than victimized. Yet it foreshadowed future conflicts, such as battles for control in 2016 amid declining health. Documents from the suit revealed patterns of favoritism that bolstered positions in those disputes. In retrospect, the $4.36 billion figure, derived from projecting the 1984 shares' value through booms and mergers, underscores the stakes. Success could have diluted control, altering media history. Instead, dismissal preserved the status quo, allowing passage in 2020 with the empire intact under new stewardship.